crispy, glazed, juicy chicken. We got the big three of Chinese American takeout: General Tso's, sesame chicken, and orange chicken. With a few key ingredients and techniques, we've got chicken that stays crispier for longer and doesn't sog out. I'm gonna show you how to make these three Chinese American classics. People tend to think of these as three different preparations, but they're essentially the same. We start with fried chicken, and then we customize it with a different version of brown sauce. We have different customizations for each. For General Tso's, more dried chilies, it's a little spicier. For sesame, we amp up the toasted sesame flavor, add some seeds. And for orange chicken, we have three sources of orange: fresh orange juice, dried tangerine peel, and fresh zest. I'm gonna show you how to make super crispy chicken using a dialed-in formula with a few key ingredients. I'm gonna show you a special dredging technique to get all those craggy bits, and then we're gonna double fry it to ensure that it stays nice and crispy after it's sauced. Let's get to mixing our sauces. I have three different kits in front of me. All the ingredients are relatively the same in terms of the foundation of the sauce. By adding flavorings or adjusting seasonings, you get different sauces. So the foundation is chicken broth, just chicken stock, dark soy sauce, light soy sauce. Light soy sauce and dark soy sauce are a really common combination in Chinese cooking. The light soy sauce provides salinity, the dark soy sauce provides more body and color. We've got some sugar, oyster sauce, rice vinegar, and that again is punching up the acidity and just brightening things up a little bit more. Toasted sesame oil, some ketchup. Now ketchup is very American, but I think it provides a little bit of body, a little bit of thickening texture. There's actually a little bit of xanthan gum in there, but also provides some tang. I think it's a really key ingredient for all three of these sauces. We've got some chicken bouillon powder, some white pepper, and potato starch. And this is going to thicken the sauce later on. I'm just gonna give this a mix. This is it. This is our mother sauce base. The thing that differentiates General Tso's chicken is that it's a little bit spicier than the other two. So we have these dried chilies. These are Facing Heaven chilies. We're gonna be using these later on when we make the sauce, but they're not mixed in right now. Also, for sesame, and this is a key difference, we've got light brown sugar in sesame chicken, and that gives some more sort of caramel notes. And we have our first addition of toasted sesame oil. This is a healthy amount, quite a bit more than in General Tso's. And for orange chicken, a good amount of fresh orange juice. Now this is unstrained because I want to leave some of the pectin in there. The pectin being in here has implications for the amount of starch that we're using for the overall sauce. Orange zest, I'll give this a mix. All three of our sauces have been mixed and they're ready to go. But why do we leave the sauce for the end as opposed to making it ahead of time? Starch thickened sauces tend to be at their best when they're freshly made. As they cool down, they start to get a little bit gloppy. They lose some of their thickening power, and then you'll have to reheat them a little bit, so it's not optimal conditions. Let's get to processing our chicken. So I've got chicken thighs here. This is about a pound of chicken thighs, boneless, skinless. You could also use boneless, skinless chicken breasts, but I find thighs to be a little bit more forgiving in terms of cooking. So let's get to processing. I'm looking for roughly 3/4 inch pieces. These are going to get dredged. They're going to increase in size as the dredge fries and sort of puffs up. So it's actually better to go a tiny bit smaller to account for that expansion. We're looking for about that size, can be a little bit smaller. You don't have to go driving yourself crazy, making everything the same size and uniform. In fact, some bits being smaller than others can be a really nice thing. This is all of our chicken thighs processed into roughly 3/4 inch cubes. These are ready to be marinated before being dredged and fried. Let's get to making our marinade for our chicken. The marinade is the same across the board. We've got some Shaoxing wine, light soy sauce that provides all of the salinity in this marinade, a little bit of white pepper, and lastly, we need an egg white. And we will give this a light mix just until things are combined. I just want it nice and flowy, not gloppy. Pretty good. What I'm gonna do here is reserve some marinade, and this marinade is going to be used to basically thicken our dredge. I'm gonna put it into our dry dredge mix, and it'll allow the dredge to clump up a little bit, and we'll get more craggy, crunchy bits out of that. We have this bit of marinade reserved. I'm gonna set this aside. That's for the dredge later on. And then we have this little bit left in the bowl, and it seems like not a lot, but it's just enough to accomplish what we need. I'm going to whisk vigorously. And so I'm getting a really foamy result, right? That's egg whites. If you've ever made meringue, this is what happens when you whip them. Even with added liquid in here, it's still foaming up. So just nice and frothy. And then we go in with our last ingredients. This is some baking soda. So baking soda is a super common additive to Chinese marinades in general. Acts as a tenderizer by raising pH, improves water binding capacity of proteins. It's super useful. We have potato starch. You could also use cornstarch here, but I've opted for potato starch. And this is to raise the viscosity of the marinade itself so that the dredge clings, adheres better to the chicken overall. We basically are looking for a thicker marinade. So this knocked some of the foam down, deflated it slightly, but we still have a little bit of foaminess left, which is precisely what I'm looking for. At this point, we can add our chicken. And I'm going to go straight in with our cut up chicken thighs. And I'm just gonna coat the chicken initially. And you might say, oh, we're good here, we can stop here. Not exactly. I'm actually gonna take the time to kind of claw it and vigorously stir back and forth. And what this motion accomplishes, it starts to agitate the chicken, and the chicken will release more myosin. Myosin is a sticky protein, and so we get a more sticky texture that helps the dredge adhere. We start to see that these pieces are well coated, they feel stickier, and that's gonna help us down the line. And what you end up with are these nicely coated chicken pieces that have really taken up that marinade, and they are, most importantly, sticky. So our chicken is marinated, it's ready to go. Let's get into mixing our dredge. For this specific style of chicken, it's getting sauced, it's getting coated, right? Naturally, water and crispy stuff doesn't mix. But our goal is to retain some of that crispiness, that crunchiness, even though it's sauced. So how do we do that, right? As a starting point, we've got all-purpose flour. Potato starch. The key is here to use a pure starch. And that's because starches in general have a higher concentration or proportion of amylose. And so that contributes to crispier foods overall. Flour contains a proportion of protein, which is antithetical to crispiness. But protein is really helpful because it helps things to adhere. So it helps this dredge adhere better to the chicken. So we do like a little bit of flour, but we also want to maximize the crispiness, so we add some pure starch. We are also going to add some wheat dextrin or Evercrisp. So this is a soluble fiber. It mainly keeps things crispier for longer, and things fry up super glassy, and it contributes to this crunchy texture even as things cool down, even as they're sauced. Lastly, we have baking powder, very common ingredient in fried chicken dredges. It provides a little bit of lift, so it's not so strictly adhered on the chicken. It improves some of that density, it lightens things up. Lastly, a little bit of salt. We're gonna give this a mix. Dredge is mixed, let's set up our frying station. We have it set up here. I've got a wire rack on a half sheet pan as a landing spot. I got a spider. We've got our oil in a wok. This is around 2¼ inches of oil, heated to about 370 degrees. And that's for our first fry. I think the last thing we need is just a landing spot for our dredged chicken. If you'll recall, we have our mixed dredge, our marinated chicken. We also have a reserved amount of marinade. Now, before we get to dredging, I am going to use this marinade and just drizzle it straight into our dredge mixture. This is a lot like when you're doing buttermilk fried chicken, where you might add a little bit of buttermilk brine to the dredge mixture to get it to be a little more clumpy, and you get these nice craggy bits. That's the same sort of principle. We're just using the marinade here. And so I'm using my balloon whisk to not just like mix it, but almost to emulate like a pastry cutter, using the tines of the whisk to break up any clumps. And so I'm using a sort of up and down motion to break up these clumps, occasionally stirring around. And over time, these clumps of hydrated starch and flour and all that are going to get a little bit finer, a little bit more pebbly, flaky, and those are the basis of our crunchy bits of our dredge. I think we're just about there. On to dredging. So we've got our chicken on the left, our dredge here, and then our landing spot. So I'm just gonna go by the handful. This is probably in 3 to 4 additions, and I'm adding our chicken, and then I'm coating. So I'm doing this initial coat, and I'm really looking to press the chicken into the dredge, and what you end up with is something like that, where the dredge is pressed in, but it's chunky, right? That chunkiness is gonna result in nice, crispy, craggy bits versus just like one uniform dusty texture or one film. So just wanna work piece by piece. Really take your time here. This is an integral step. If you place a premium on crispy fried texture, crunchy texture, then this is a step you don't wanna cut corners on. Now the reason I'm not dumping all the chicken in at once is purely because I want enough room in the bowl to work with. And here's a good example. I want a little more coverage of the dredge here, so I have a little tip. If you want some more of that dredge to adhere, you could just go back to the side of the bowl, pick up a little bit of marinade, and then press in, and there you go. So, all right, our last little bit, we finished that up, made it by the skin of our teeth. Our chicken is dredged, and it's ready for our first fry. All right, let's let her rip. I'm dropping 2 by 2 so that they remain separate. I suppose you could load these all into a spider and dump them, but then you would have to take the extra time to really agitate and stir to make sure that they are separate. When it comes to dropping these, 2 things I would keep in mind are generally to drop low so that you don't splash back and burn yourself. But the other thing that's cool about using a wok in this instance is that we can use the sides of the wok as sort of a slide to just slide these bad boys in. As I drop these in, I'm noticing the fryer temperature is dropping steadily, and that's okay, we've accounted for that. And I'm gonna come in with a perforated spoon and just agitate things. What I'm looking to do here is really to just separate the pieces so that nothing is sticking to itself. So water is evaporating. And that's really the goal of this first fry, really. It's not so much to get color and crispness, it's primarily to cook the chicken through and then to set the coating, to really gelatinize the starches and start that evaporation process. So I'm just adjusting my heat as needed to maintain a temperature between 280 and 300 degrees. And these are gonna cook for about 3 minutes, 4 minutes. So these are looking pretty good for their first fry, and I will start the dismount. Just going straight into the sheet pan here. There you go. That's the end of the first fry. We're gonna crank up this oil temperature to about 385 for our second fry. Let this come back up. Our oil is heated to 385. We're ready for our second fry. I have no problem just loading up the spider with a bunch of these pieces and then dumping them. In fact, that's probably a little more efficient because these are already fried up and separated. Loaded up a spider, gonna go in, and then come in with the rest. Set a timer. Got a little bit of a temp drop. Should even out to around 350. You're looking to fry these for around 3 to 4 minutes. till they're nice golden brown and crispy. And you can already see that they've taken on some color instantaneously as the heat transfer occurred from the hot oil to the chicken. So it's been about 3 minutes. I am going to take these out. And these are nice, deep golden brown. You can tell that the second fry has really crisped things up and we can hear it. So I'll just even like move these around. We may have taken it to an extreme in terms of the crunchiness, crisp factor, but just to give you a frame of reference to take one for the team, because these are ripping hot, I'll bite into one. I was like insanely crunchy, insanely crispy. Let's make all three of our sauces. We have some aromatics and various things to round out the sauce. We've got a little bit of oil. Let that come up to temp a little bit. And as that's going, I'm going to grate some aromatics. 20 grams of ginger, it's about 10 grams of garlic, just straight in. Those are our fresh aromatics. And for our General Tso's chicken, it's our Facing Heaven chilies. And I'm going to just cut them in half. It's about 5 grams of chilies. And that's gonna lend a lot of that heat of General Tso's chicken. And for orange chicken, we have not as much spice as the General Tso's, but just a little bit of background heat. At this point, I'm actually going to add our hydrated mandarin peel, tanpei. We're at a good point to start adding our Shaoxing wine, and we're just deglazing. I'm gonna give our sauce mixture a little stir, and then we're in. Let this come up. We're looking for a little bit of a boil. I think we're there. I'm going to go off heat, at which point I'm gonna add a bunch of toasted sesame seeds and a little glug of toasted sesame oil. And so we get a lot of good sesame flavor into this dish, which is the whole point, right? Visually, I'm looking for the texture of cold maple syrup. This looks at a perfect point. We're gonna off heat, and then we are ready to add our chicken. And then we're just gonna work it with our spatula. As you keep tossing and stirring, things get well coated, and that sauce actually starts to thicken up slightly, and it coats and lacquers the chicken in a really amazing way. All we have left to do is plate it up. We have some sesame seeds, just for good measure, a couple of these mandarin peels, a couple chilies here and there. That's our General Tso's chicken, sesame chicken, orange chicken. And we are at our moment of truth. We have all three of our takeout chickens in front of us. So let's start with our General Tso's. Super nice and crispy. I got sweet, I got savory, a little bit of acidity, and then at the very end, lingering heat, and that's those dried chilies. Let's try our sesame chicken. That's bomb. That's really good. Very, very sesame forward in flavor. Again, super crispy throughout, but sauced appropriately. I really like this version. Finally, we have our orange chicken. I'll be honest, I'm generally not the biggest fan of orange chicken, but if it was made like that every time, I could be converted. If I had to describe it, it's very complex. It's not just like orange soda flavor. We've got 3 levels of orange complexity, and that's really coming through. So I get OJ, fresh orange juice, that orange zest, so it's very citrus aroma, and then that slight bittersweetness complexity from the dried mandarin peel. And then finally, tiny hit of heat, and that's just takes it over the edge for me. These, I think, are 3 very successful versions of these Chinese American classics. If you want these recipes, go to ChefSteps.com, like and subscribe on YouTube. And if you're not gonna make these at home, go out to your Chinese restaurants, your local Chinese restaurants. Please support your local businesses. Do that for me, they would appreciate it. I've been talking for like 4 hours. That shit's still crispy.
Subscribe to our channel and visit ChefSteps.com for more tips, recipes, guides, and tools to help you level up in the kitchen.